Welcome to Let's, English stories you can enjoy anytime, anywhere. Today's story takes us to the deepest place on Earth, a mysterious, dark trench at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. For centuries, no one knew it existed. Even now, few people truly understand what lies there. But in the early 20th century, explorers and scientists began to uncover its secrets. They used ropes, weights, sound waves, and eventually submarines to measure the great depths of the ocean. What they found was incredible. A place deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Strange creatures, total darkness, crushing pressure, and a story of human curiosity that pushed the limits of technology and courage. In this story, we'll follow the journey of those early scientists, the ships they sailed, and the discoveries they made. We'll see how one quiet corner of the ocean became a place of global fascination, not with treasure, but with knowledge. So, get comfortable. Let's travel deep under the sea to a place few have ever seen. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from any major land, lies a place so deep, so silent, that it remained unknown for most of human history. Sailors crossed the ocean for centuries, but none of them knew what lay beneath their ships. The water seemed endless, the horizon calm. But far below, something incredible was hidden. In the late 1800s, scientists began to wonder, how deep is the ocean really? At that time, there were no satellites, no advanced sonar, no deep-sea submarines. The only way to measure the ocean floor was simple and dangerous. Sailors would tie a heavy weight to a long rope, drop it into the water, and wait. When the rope touched the bottom, they measured the length. In 1875, a British ship called the HMS Challenger was sent on a long scientific voyage around the world. One of its goals was to map the ocean floor. The crew worked hard every day, lowering ropes and weights into the sea and recording what they found. Most of the time, the ocean was deep, around 4,000 to 6,000 meters, but not shocking, until they reached one strange place in the Western Pacific. There, something unexpected happened. When the crew dropped the line, it kept going, and going, and going. The weight sank so far that the rope almost ran out. They checked their tools again. It wasn't a mistake. The ocean was much deeper here than anywhere else they had measured. This was the first known recording of what we now call the Mariana Trench. Still, in 1875, it was only a number in a notebook. No one could see what was really down there. It would take many more years and much better technology before anyone could truly explore it. In the early 20th century, countries like Germany, Japan, and the United States became interested in the deep sea. They wanted to know more about the Earth, its shape, and its hidden places. By the 1920s, new machines made it possible to use sound waves, sonar, to measure depth. A ship could send a sound down through the water and listen for the echo. The longer the echo took to return, the deeper the water. Using this new method, Japanese scientists aboard the ship Takahashi explored the Western Pacific in 1927. Near a group of islands called the Marianas, they found a place deeper than any measured before, over 10,000 meters. It was hard to believe, but the numbers were clear. In honor of the nearby islands, scientists named it the Mariana Trench. But still no one had seen it. They had numbers, maps, and guesses, but no eyes had ever looked into the darkness of the trench, and no machine had gone that far. That would change in the years to come. Some people began to dream of going there, not just measuring it, but actually diving into it. A place so deep that the pressure could crush a submarine like a can. A place with no light, near freezing temperatures and unknown creatures. It sounded impossible. But explorers, as always, were curious. And curiosity has always been stronger than fear. By the 1950s, the world had changed. After World War II, technology advanced faster than ever before. Airplanes could fly across oceans. Rockets reached the edge of space. And under the sea, new machines allowed humans to dive deeper than ever before. In Switzerland, an engineer named Auguste Piccard had an unusual dream. He wanted to build a vessel that could go to the bottom of the ocean, not just deep, all the way down. He believed it was possible. With help from his son, Jacques, he designed a strange-looking craft called a bathyscaphe. It looked like a metal balloon with a steel ball underneath. The balloon part was filled with gasoline, which is lighter than water. The steel ball, the passenger cabin, was small, but strong enough to handle the crushing pressure of the deep sea. Piccard's bathyscaphe was tested several times. It went deeper than any submarine had gone before, but they still hadn't reached the very bottom. The deepest point of the Mariana Trench, called the Challenger Deep. In the late 1950s, the U.S. Navy became interested. They wanted to support a mission to reach the deepest part of the ocean. They worked with the Piccards and modified their bathyscaphe, giving it a new name, Trieste. On January 23, 1960, 2 men climbed into the small steel sphere of the Trieste, Jacques Piccard and a U.S. Navy lieutenant named Don Walsh. There was barely room for the 2 of them to sit. Around them was the great pressure of the ocean, growing stronger with every meter of depth. The dive began in the early morning. Slowly, the Trieste sank deeper and deeper. At 1,000 meters, they could no longer see sunlight. At 3,000 meters, the pressure was more than 300 times what we feel on the surface. At 6,000 meters, they were deeper than any submarine had ever gone. Then, 8,000, 10,000. The numbers kept rising. At one point, they heard a loud crack. Something on the outside had broken, a small window, but the cabin stayed strong. They continued the descent. Finally, after nearly 5 hours, the Trieste touched the bottom. They were at 10,911 meters, over 35,000 feet down. No one had ever been this deep. Outside, it was completely dark. The temperature was near freezing. Yet, through the small window, they saw something moving, a flat fish slowly swimming past. Even here, in the deepest place on Earth, life existed. They stayed at the bottom for only 20 minutes. Then they released weights and slowly floated back up to the surface. The journey up took over 3 hours. When they reached the top, the world celebrated. The mission had succeeded. 2 men had gone to the very bottom of the sea and returned alive. But strangely, after that dive, no one returned to the Challenger Deep for more than 50 years. Why? Because the ocean is quiet, and sometimes even great stories are forgotten, for a while. After the historic dive of the Trieste in 1960, the Mariana Trench returned to silence. Scientists were amazed by the mission, but they also knew how difficult and expensive such deep dives were. There were easier places to explore, safer places, places with more sunlight. For decades, the trench slept. That doesn't mean it was forgotten. Satellites and sonar maps kept improving. Research ships continued to pass over the area. Scientists collected data, updated charts, and confirmed what the Trieste had shown. The Challenger Deep really was the deepest known point in the ocean. But still, no one returned to the bottom. In the 1990s and early 2000s, new technologies began to change that. Robots, unmanned submarines, could now go where people could not. These machines, called ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, were small, strong, and didn't need air or heat. They could dive for hours, film what they saw, and send images back to ships above. In 2009, one of these robotic dives was launched by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. The team used a deep-sea probe to study the trench. What they found was fascinating: mud, rocks, strange chemicals, and life. Tiny creatures lived down there: worms, microbes. Some were completely new to science. They survived without sunlight, feeding on chemicals from the rocks. These organisms didn't just survive, they thrived, even under the crushing pressure. But while the robots gave scientists important data, there was still something missing: human eyes. Watching a video isn't the same as being there. Feeling the silence, the weight of the ocean, the slow descent into total darkness. In 2012, something extraordinary happened. A man who was not a scientist, but a storyteller, film director James Cameron, decided to go down himself. Cameron had spent years making movies like Titanic and Avatar, but he also had a lifelong love for the ocean. With his own funding and a team of engineers, he built a one-person submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. It looked like something from science fiction, narrow, bright green, and shaped like a torpedo. Inside was just enough space for one person. On March 26, 2012, James Cameron dove alone into the Challenger Deep. The journey down took over 2 hours. He spent several hours at the bottom, filming, collecting samples, and taking notes. It was the first solo dive to the deepest place on Earth. When he returned, he said it felt like being on another planet. Dark, alien, still. He had proven something important. Humans could still reach the deepest parts of our world, not just with machines, but in person. The trench no longer slept. It had been visited again. James Cameron's dive in 2012 opened a new chapter in deep-sea exploration. Suddenly, people were interested again. What was really down there? What could we learn from the trench? Not just about the ocean, but about Earth, and maybe even life beyond it. After Cameron's mission, researchers from many countries started to study the Mariana Trench more closely. New robotic dives were planned. Better cameras, stronger lights, and smarter machines were sent down into the darkness. In 2014, Chinese scientists sent an ROV called Haima to explore parts of the trench. It recorded video of strange, ghost-like creatures floating near the sea floor. Some had never been seen before. Others looked like species known from shallow water, but changed, adapted to the extreme pressure and cold. They had translucent bodies, glowing spots, and slow, drifting movements. It was like watching life from another world. Then in 2018, a research project led by scientists from the UK and New Zealand made a surprising discovery: plastic. At over 10,000 meters deep, in a place untouched by sunlight, they found a plastic bag. It was a clear sign that even Earth's most remote places were not safe from pollution. Alongside the bag researchers also found synthetic fibers, microplastics, and fragments of packaging, some possibly decades old. The finding shocked the world. People had always imagined the deep ocean as pure, ancient, untouched. But now, even the bottom of the Mariana Trench showed signs of human activity. It was a powerful reminder that the ocean is not endless, and that our actions on the surface reach even the darkest depths. Still, not all discoveries were sad. In 2019, another dive broke records, this time by a man named Victor Vescovo. Vescovo was a private explorer, a former U.S. Navy officer, and a deep-sea enthusiast. He had a personal goal: to dive to the deepest points in all 5 of Earth's oceans. The project was called the 5 Deeps Expedition, and it was one of the most ambitious private exploration missions in history. To do this, he helped design a new submersible called DSV Limiting Factor. It was built to dive repeatedly to full ocean depth, something no other manned sub had done before. It had thick titanium walls, precision controls, and cameras that could operate under crushing pressure. In May 2019, Vescovo dove to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. He reached a depth of 10,928 meters, slightly deeper than Cameron's dive. While down there, he saw rock formations, shrimp-like creatures, and, again, signs of plastic. One piece looked like a candy wrapper, frozen in the silt. He dove to the bottom 4 times, proving that deep-sea exploration was no longer a once-in-a-lifetime event, but something that could be repeated with the right tools and training. His team also used robotic vehicles to map and film the trench like never before. The images they brought back were stunning: long, narrow canyons, alien-like animals, and mineral formations that looked like underwater cathedrals. The trench was not just a scar in the ocean floor. It was a dynamic, living place. Perhaps most exciting of all, scientists found new species. Tiny, transparent animals with soft, jelly-like bodies. Some lived inside small holes in the seafloor. Others floated slowly through the dark water, glowing faintly. One resembled a floating ribbon, another a spinning glass orb. Each one was fragile, but alive. Every discovery raised more questions. How do these creatures survive? What do they eat? How long have they lived here? Could life like this exist on other planets, in oceans beneath ice? The Mariana Trench was not just a hole in the earth anymore. It was a living laboratory, a place that held the keys to questions we hadn't even learned to ask. And it still had secrets to share. Today, the Mariana Trench remains one of the most mysterious places on Earth. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the trench's narrow, twisting landscape. But every year, we learn a little more. International teams of scientists continue to explore its depths. They send down new robots, smaller, faster, better. Some can collect samples of water, rock, and living creatures. Others can map every crack and ridge in high detail. With each mission, we gain more than data. We gain wonder. The trench continues to remind us how much is left to discover. In recent years, researchers have begun studying the trench's chemistry more closely. They've found that the water down there is rich in rare minerals. Some of these might help us understand how Earth formed, or even offer clues about resources deep below the ocean floor. Others may hold potential for medicine, offering new compounds that can fight disease. There's also growing interest in the trench as an example of extreme environments. Scientists studying its creatures hope to learn how life can adapt to high pressure, no light, and limited food. This has already led to insights into biology, evolution, and survival. It may even help us prepare for human missions to Mars and beyond. What draws people to this deep, dark place? Part of the answer is science. The trench teaches us how life can survive in extreme conditions. That knowledge could help us understand other planets, especially icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, which may have oceans beneath their frozen surfaces. But part of the answer is something older, something human. The trench represents mystery. It is a place untouched by most of the world, a frontier. And frontiers have always called to us. Long ago, explorers set sail, not knowing what lay beyond the horizon. Today, the trench is one of the last truly unknown regions on our planet. And still, people go, not for fame or gold, but because it is there. And because being human means asking what lies below. We may never fully answer that question, but we can keep asking it. Keep diving. Keep dreaming. The story of the Mariana Trench is not just about pressure and depth. It's about curiosity, about the drive to know more, to go farther. It's the story of sailors, scientists, engineers, and dreamers. People who looked at the endless sea and thought, what if? And so the work continues, slowly, patiently, and with care. Because the ocean still guards its secrets. Because the silence still speaks. The sea does not give up its secrets easily, but it rewards those who listen. Thank you for listening. What did you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you have an idea for a story you'd like to hear next, let me know.